Hey, Sheriff.
Well, good afternoon. Walton County Sheriff Mike Adkinson, along with our Public Affairs Coordinator Extraordinaire, Corey DeBrinia. And this is the Sheriff Live. So, what is the Sheriff Live? This is the Walton County Sheriff's Office, Walton County, Florida. We are halfway between Pensacola and Tallahassee. And this is our kind of bi-weekly stakeholder meeting where we talk to my bosses, citizens of Walton County, and we try and answer your questions. We take the questions live. What we always say is we don't guarantee that I know the answer. We guarantee that we can find you one. We equally do not guarantee that you're going to like the answer. So I can't guarantee you that, but we will try and get you an answer to your questions. It's been super busy and, a lot of stuff going on, and we're kind of excited to be back. And gosh, it's emergency beaming in right when we're toning in right when we're getting on here. So Memorial Day weekend behind us, Corey.
Yes.
Super busy. And
I think it went pretty smooth as opposed to years past.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it was, listen, a lot of people working, a lot of things going on. You have to realize if you're from Walton County or if you're not from Walton County, let me give you an example. We're about 300,000 people here over the weekend. So it's really busy. That's a county that's population is really about 90 some odd thousand, give or take. So we're the sixth fastest growing county in the nation, by the way, and the fastest growing municipality in Florida is here as well, Freeport, Florida. But we're a tourism community, and you certainly felt it this weekend. The traffic was intense, but knock on wood, we had a pretty good weekend with it. So I'm very pleased. I think our businesses and our homeowners were happy with some that can actually be happy. Now, there are some people that just can't be happy regardless, and I can't quite help them. However, most of the people had a good time, and I think it went really well. So we're excited. We're excited about that.
Yeah. A couple of things coming up.
Okay.
That we kind of prefaced with before. The first is that hurricane season starts tomorrow. Yuck.
Yeah. So hurricane season. Listen, and there's a tax holiday coming up with hurricane season as well too. So if you need items for hurricane preparedness like generators, gas cans, things of that nature, there's a tax holiday because we want people to be prepared. A hurricane is one of those rare things where you have plenty of time to prepare. So we would ask you to go ahead and do that. We're going to run through October, and we just want to do the best. The more preparation we put on the front end, the better we are on the back end. And I can tell you, I know emergency management from the county and emergency management from our office at the Sheriff's Office has been working together, had an exercise, I think actually today, on some things as well too. So it's how you get better as you practice and you hope it doesn't come, but listen, it's going to come eventually. So we have to be prepared.
Sure.
So definitely had that going on. And
next thing, and we can kind of tie this into other topics to come, but our helicopter is up and running.
Yeah, Walton Air Rescue is live. We're running and got our folks trying to make some difference in some people's lives. Our official rollout is going to probably be next month. We'll do a grand opening sometime with them, but they're based out of the Defuniak Springs Airport, which is crucial right now, given that we don't have we don't have a hospital in the north end of the county right now. So seconds and minutes matter in this business, and we're glad to partnership with those folks, and it's exciting. It looks good. The bird looks great. I saw it yesterday. Drove past the airport, and I think the city of Defuniak's happy to have it there. And ultimately we'll try and get a ninth. We're 8 ambulances in on the north. We are all. For those of you that don't know, the Walton County Sheriff's Office is also Walton County Fire Rescue, Walton County Animal Control, and Consolidated Communications as well as the jail. So we got a lot going on here. On our fire rescue side, I would say, I think I'll brag a little bit on our staff again there. Really one of the top rated medical fire rescues in the state of Florida. We're medically accredited, and I think, we're running about 8 ambulances now. I think we'll push into that 9th ambulance here in the next year or so, and try to continue to deliver a high level of service. But I will tell you, those men and women stay constantly trained. I was at the Freeport station today, and just spending some time with those folks and just tell them we appreciate them with the job they're doing. So a lot going on in fire rescue from that standpoint as well too. Breaking ground finally. I think we're finally fixing to have some movement on our station at Glendale Highway 2 and 83. So if you're from here, if you're actually from Walton County, you'd call that the Glendale Highway. Nobody calls it that anymore, but that's actually what the only thing I knew it was called for many years. But we're excited about that. And then once the archaeologists are through with Choctaw Beach, we'll start building. So if you want to know how to tie up a few $1 million, get the federal government involved.
Yeah. Jerome says, good evening from Alpena, Michigan.
Wow.
Alicia says, hi. Miss Bishop says, watching. Beth Niblet, she works in our jail, speaking of which, she says hello. And then Brad Denton is asking for an update on the crash on I-10 today.
Obviously, very bad crash that was involved in a pursuit with the Florida Highway Patrol. And at this point, I think they have confirmed a fatality at this point. I'm not sure about the other individuals, but very, very bad situation. Very bad situation.
Bill Keys, whatever came of the huge group of teenagers that broke into the house at Watercolor, did any of them get arrested or prosecuted? A lot of people are hinting at the fact that this is being swept under the rug because there are locals or are related to Leos.
Oh, that's kind of ludicrous, but it sounds good. It's a good story to tell anyway. So we have spoken to the state's attorney on several occasions, who's talked to the victims in this case. And at this point, there's really nothing we can go forward with. There's a couple of different reasons for that, but none of which were just mentioned. We actually identified probably 100 plus of those kids, but the state's attorney's office, and I agree with him, I want to be clear about that, you can't prosecute those kids for being there. So given that there was little to no damage and I think some minor things stolen, they simply were unable to get somebody to hold accountable for actually scheduling the party, which is a big deal. I know the state talked to the victims probably a month or two ago. So we were, as of a month or two ago, we were asking them for more information. It's a little more difficult than it sometimes sounds, but there's at the end of the day, you don't catch them all. So.
And then another question about the house party in Watercolor. We just addressed that. Marcus Von Doom is asking, what's going on with the hospital situation here in northern Walton County?
You know, to be honest with you, Marcus, I'm not really sure at this point. I've heard multiple different hospital groups trying to make inquiries into opening something here. I have not had any discussions with Help Mart at this point in a number of months. I'm not sure, but I can tell you this: we desperately need it. I mean, it's a big deal. It's a big deal.
Yeah. Anna Thompson says you're looking good.
Thank you.
Sheriff, it's looking good.
Feel like the great pumpkin in this orange shirt.
Janet Hurst. We still have heavy traffic on 90 in front of our house from I-10 crash. Prayers for all involved in those working the scene. That was a tough scene for those responding today.
It's a bad situation.
Yeah.
It's a bad situation.
Shelley Flowers says, Sheriff is looking like Mr. Clean.
Yeah, trying.
He calls that the company haircut.
Yep.
Sheila Strickland, what is the fireworks law in Walton County? When can you use them?
So it's actually a state law. It's not so much a local ordinance, but essentially there's not really a time frame on when you can use them from my standpoint. I don't know it off the top of my head, but the law changed last year allowing some fireworks that weren't traditionally sold here that now are.
On certain holidays.
On certain holidays. But I have to tell you, the other thing too is the number one thing to watch with that is be aware of your surroundings from a fire standpoint, because when it's really dry, you have to use a little bit of judgment with this. That's regardless of what type of fireworks you use. That when there's wind, and we had 48 houses burned down here a couple of years ago. It wasn't from fireworks, but I will tell you, could have easily under those kind of circumstances. So the main thing with those fireworks is just be aware of your surroundings and the conditions, because it does. Yeah. I'm gonna tell you, the fire that got away from fireworks probably 7 or 8 years ago now. That got down on the dunes. It liked to got away from us then. South Walton Fire District did a great job of working that, but that was a fireworks. That was a fireworks fire, and you just really the biggest issue is what's going on with the environment. Yeah,
and I'm sure you can look up that law. I believe 4th of July is one of the holidays where it is legal to use fireworks now. Vincent says, hello, you're doing great things in Walton County. And then Christina Jimenez, was there a fatality in the Rock Hill crash from yesterday with the dump truck?
No, it was not a fatality from yesterday.
Yeah.
If I'm correct. Am I correct about that? There was not, that yesterday was not a fatality.
I think that
it was a very entrapment. It was a lot of work to get that individual out, but there was not a fatality.
Yeah. Christy Jared Allen says, thank you for all you do. Tiffany Hall says, hey, Sheriff, do you know what's going on Highway 10? You're doing great. I think she means Interstate 10.
Yeah, there was a pursuit that was initiated by the Florida Highway Patrol that ended up in a very serious wreck involving a fatality in the vehicle that was fleeing someone completely innocent there is unfortunately their life was lost in that incident.
Yeah.
And that'll be investigated and managed by the Highway Patrol. Walton County Fire Rescue and Walton County deputies are there to provide assistance and try to assist with life-rendering aid or life-assisting aid.
Tina Miller, who can we reach out to for getting a traffic light at 331 in Rock Hill? There's been so many accidents. I know that a traffic light is about to be put in on Business 331 and 331.
Yeah, but she's asking about Rock Hill.
Asking about
so
Rock Hill
DOT,
specifically.
The DOT office, and I got corrected on this. The DOT's office is actually where, Corey?
Chipley.
Is actually, I thought I said Chipley, and somebody told me.
Oh, no, you said District 1. It's actually District 3.
Oh, okay.
FDOT is
the
District
Chipley
3.
office. So if we're Florida Department of Transportation District 3, but the office is in Chipley. And they're really the ones that control that, and they have a whole set of criteria of when they decide to do it. But I agree with you. That would be an area that is especially in the mornings.
Yeah, and
especially in the mornings.
I think that there's a misconception that because the road is in Walton County, that Walton County Board of County Commissioners can put up a traffic light, and that's not the case. That is a U.S. highway, so it falls under the jurisdiction of FDOT. Alan White also wants to know, why we can't get a traffic light at Rock Hill. William Brookshire, when are we going to get an emergency room? We just discussed that.
Listen, those are two things right there. Trust me, if I could write a check for the light at 331 or a hospital, you'd have both of them. It's that big of a deal. And I think I said this, I had to circle back to it, but there are hospitals that are inquiring about it. But, we're several years. I mean, if they broke ground tomorrow, if they don't buy the Health Mart building, we're several years in from having an emergency room, and it is a problem. It's a real problem for the citizens here.
What do you think the challenge has been not having a hospital in our jurisdiction? I know we've added
strokes, heart attacks, any trauma-related thing, and obviously the helicopter helps now. But, the reality of that is having an emergency room here is crucial. From a sheriff's office and fire rescue standpoint, the strain has been pretty significant. I mean, obviously, it was a couple $1 million to put another fire truck another ambulance into service, right? That doesn't alleviate the need. We needed that one before. So now, we'll push up to that 9th ambulance, and it's incredibly expensive. We need it, obviously, but we need that emergency room here for sure.
Speaking of EMS folks, they've done a fantastic job. Some of our paramedics are manning that helicopter, so it's fire rescue employees.
Sure. Absolutely.
A lot different than, and last week was EMS week, so shout out. A lot different than being an EMT or paramedic in a large city.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Sure. It's a bit, but, listen, the skills are the same, right? I mean, the skills are the same. There's a lot of challenges that come with the distance in this situation, and they are saving lives, but we're behind the 8 ball when you have that far to go. If you're facing a 40-minute drive, a 30-minute drive, so that helicopter makes a huge difference. But we need an emergency room.
Yeah. Sheila said she didn't want to pop any fireworks specifically, but she has a neighbor and it scares her. When he pops them off. Leanne McMore says, why can't there be a 4-way stop at College Avenue and 2nd Street? I
didn't know there was, until she just said that, because I think the right above that, which is Bay and 2nd, is a 4-way. So that's a good question. But I actually can answer that one a little bit easier about how to get a solution with that. You can call the city of Defuniak Springs, because that's a city road there inside the city limits. If you'll talk to the mayor, your city councilman, whoever that is right there, they can work on getting you a stop sign there. But they're actually, it's funny if she mentions that, because there's one, the street before it, I think at Bay.
Not even 100 yards away.
Yeah, no, it's close.
Yeah.
It's close.
And we do get questions like that a lot about speed bumps and traffic lights and 4-way stops. And while we think that they're very important, there has to be traffic studies done, and like city and state, we got to figure out who's responsible for the road.
That one's a little bit easier, just because I know in the city that the city handles that. So there may be some good folks to.
Great. Dennis Ilk. Okay. I called the sheriff's office for a noise complaint about 6 months ago, and they said I would need to call code enforcement and that they close at 5 p.m. I'm confused. Do we have to wait for code enforcement to open the next day to complain? Why does code enforcement close if they handle these types of complaints?
So there are like three different questions, but you're absolutely right on about all of them. We literally had this discussion with county code, probably a month ago. And so essentially we're not aware that they were closing at 5 per se. And I don't know that they're in the process of altering their schedules. Essentially, before 10, we treat it as a code issue, an ordinance violation. After 10, we start treating it like a disturbance of the peace, right? Or just willful noncompliance when you're trying to disturb the peace. That's a little bit different as well, too. So code, I think, is in the process of having somebody work up until the actual time of 10 o'clock. And hopefully that's going to come to pass here fairly soon. But at the bottom line, if they're closed, we'll go ahead and come out. So we'll make sure that our dispatch is aware of that, because that's kind of what we've said now. Even if they're not open, we're going to come out there and deal with it. So that's my apologies. If something didn't work there, we'll see about making sure that dispatch understands if they're not there, then we need to come on out.
Sure. Kristen Sherry heard a lot of conflicting plans for Mac Bayou. I'm not sure if she's talking about the construction or what they plan on doing about
I apologize, I'm not
the
sure.
Infrastructure. Martha Weaver Fortner, I'm sorry I missed the answer of what happened with the water sound break-in. Would you mind repeating it?
Water sound break-in.
The water sound house party.
Oh gosh, from over a year ago. So the last that we had conversation was probably a month or two ago with the state's attorney meeting with the victim and the family, trying to request some information. And basically to move forward, we had to have some additional information. We had some subpoenas out and we're ready to try and make charges on an individual. And at the time, the state said, listen, they don't feel that it was sufficient to move forward. And I understand where they're coming from with it. And I think one of the misconceptions about this is that we should charge every kid that was there, which is absolutely not true. And it's not even legally plausible, right? So we couldn't do that. And I think that would have, I think for a couple of reasons, because there was a party that was advertised for over a week saying, hey, come to this party. So they have to know or believe to know that that wasn't okay. And so when you advertise something over the internet for like a week or so, it's kind of hard to hold some other people accountable to that. So while we know 100+ people that were there, and we had families and people call us and say, hey, my child was there, what do I need to do? And they were all pretty helpful about telling us where they had heard it from. The problem was to get to who was the actual organizer of the party that just so happened to know that they were going to be out of town a week in advance. That's pretty bold, right, to be able to advertise that. And I think when the investigator got down to it, at the end of the day, when we showed them, we finally got subpoenas from 2 or 3 different social media, and by the time it was shared between 100 kids, they said they didn't feel that was strong enough to go forward with. And we needed some additional information that we didn't get. Yeah.
And I feel like it's very similar to when the school threats start to get recirculated, when you have kids screenshots. It's so hard to find the origin.
Screenshots. And I think a couple of things, that make this more a story of interest for some people, because it's a social order thing, right? Because there wasn't a lot of damage done. And I think it wasn't a bunch of items stolen, but it's the fact it's somebody's home, which is a big deal, right? And that matters to people. So for us, that same night, we had a shooting where somebody was hurt badly in a robbery and a high-speed pursuit. That was the same night, right? Simultaneously. And so all of these things are important, but at the end of the day, there just comes a time to say, look, we're not going to be able to charge somebody at this, and we've got to move forward. Now, we continued trying to do that as long as we could, but at the end of the day, there just comes time, hey, we don't solve everything. Not from lack of trying, though.
Yeah.
A lot of effort put into that.
A lot of hours.
A lot of it. I'll just be very blunt with you. If there had not been so much public interest, we probably wouldn't have continued based on the amount of effort that had been put into this. And I think it's just so easy because people can identify, well, I know this kid, I know that kid. Well, yeah, we do too. We identified tons of kids there, But at the end of the day, you can't charge us whether you want to or not.
You have to be able to prove.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You got to be able to prove it. You
have to be able to prove that they knew they weren't supposed to be there.
Sure.
Okay. Joe Burton, Florida is one of 11 states that rejected Medicaid expansion, and this has led to the closing of our rural hospitals and emergency rooms. What are your thoughts?
I think I'm entirely too ignorant of the intricacies of that subject to make an intelligent discussion about it, right? I will say that in my discussion with the previous owner, Doc Thompson, and some folks surrounding the intricacies of emergency rooms, which I'm getting a little education on right over the last year, it's incredibly difficult to keep a rural hospital open. That's the bottom line. And that hospitals tend to make money. Emergency rooms tend to lose money. That's a fact, apparently. They make money in specialty services, i.e., gastroenterologist, endocrinologist, surgeon, things of that nature. And so for a rural hospital, they take on a lot of loss. And I can remember some of the numbers they told us that Dr. Thompson had told us several years ago, that of the number of people that don't pay. And to the question, I'm not sure how that works on the reimbursement of billing, but there certainly is some impact with that. But it was literally hundreds of people come in a month that never pay. They get the service and they never pay. We face that with our ambulances, quite frankly. We do that, but we're not a for-profit business. We're a public service, and so sometimes, vast number of times we don't get paid. I would say, I've got somebody sitting here. What would you say the percentage of time that we get paid?
That we get paid?
Yeah.
We probably get paid about 65%.
So roughly 60. So call it 60-65% that we get some level of reimbursement. But that means 40% of those trips are not reimbursed. And that's true of the jail too, by the way. So we had a young lady that we never set foot in the county jail because we were transporting her from another agency, had a severe medical issue. And next thing you know, we're taking her to Crestview. So hundreds of thousands of dollars of a bill Walton County Sheriff's Office got for somebody that never set foot in our jail, that wasn't our arrest to start with, but because they were in the sheriff's custody, i.e. a deputy sheriff, I become responsible for it. And you, the taxpayers of Walton County, become responsible for it. So it is incredibly expensive, and particularly when people don't pay.
Yeah.
Or don't even assist with it.
We hope that answers your question, Joe. It may.
Jail medical tops a couple $1 million a year, just so you know, even
sure.
at the jail.
Yeah. Ollie Walker, we're so appreciative of all that you and the rest of the department do to keep things running smoothly in the county. I've noticed that deputies are pulling over more LSVs on 30A for infractions. Thank you. There are so many underage drivers and lap riders. The accident a couple months ago where the woman fell off the back of the cart into traffic was miraculously okay. That was a wake-up call. That being said, can anything be enforced concerning bike riders without lights, a Florida law at night? It is so dark around 30A, and it's hard to see the kids on bicycles. I'm afraid it's a tragedy waiting to happen.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's scary. At the end of the day, that's with the low-speed vehicles. We stopped 400 and something in just a couple of weeks. 400 and something. I'll tell you what we are talking about doing. I'm not 100% on this yet, but we're talking about towing them up here. Right now, we're towing them and letting the owners come in to get them, or the rental company. But maybe that's not getting people's attention. So we may start towing them up here into an impound yard here, just to say, look, we're serious about this. Because for some people, big deal. They just pay the fine. It's not an inconvenience to them because they're not here, right? So we need to make it enough that somebody stops and said, hey, we need to make sure our guests are educated too. So that's something we're considering.
And the same goes for bike riders, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
We could team up with some of the businesses that rent out bicycles, for example, and try to see if there's more bicycle safety that can go on. And we'll look into that. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and it's kind of like jaywalking. It's one of those things that everybody gets really mad if a deputy stops them for jaywalking, right? But at the same time, people get hit on 30A. It's we deal with this kind of stuff a lot. It's silly to you if your kid gets stopped on a skateboard or a bicycle, right? You think it's silly, or they get caught crossing the road. But for us, we have to kind of listen. We're not going to go tackling these kids over a jaywalking, right? But at the same time, there's a reason. But I literally watched a guy. I was telling my wife this. I watched a guy the other day in Publix reach in and grab 2 grapes out of a bunch of grapes and eat them. Then grab another one, and I'm like, what's wrong with you? Is there something functionally not right with you? And you're an adult, and you know better than this. But I feel that way about people that don't bring their carts back to the shopping cart thing. So maybe I'm the wrong person to ask.
Aldi has the best idea for that.
I think, well, and two, I think that it's all to prevent loss of life, which is we're totally on board with. But I can totally concur. It's definitely one person's opinion to the next. We got a pretty nasty comment from somebody who was here on vacation.
How dare
and one of our traffic units pulled him over because he didn't have his 3-year-old in a car seat on the golf cart, and he was ticketed, and he was not happy about it. But our residents want to see that kind of enforcement going on. So
sure.
it's definitely a double-edged sword. Katie Shamel, How is it people with out-of-state license plates have a Walton County beach permit? I thought this was for Walton County residents only.
One would hope. No, it is actually for anybody that owns property in Walton County can put in for a. But you know, to me, the beach. Now I'm going to make a lot of people mad. But if I was the BCC, I would just because there's so many people down there at Grayton, I make this real simple. If you're not registered to vote in Walton County, you don't get a beach permit. I don't care how much property you own here. If you don't live here, then you shouldn't get a beach permit. And so, well, Sheriff, why would you say that? Because we're trying to reduce the amount of traffic, right? And so what happens with a lot of time is people can rent their beach vehicle. They leave a vehicle here, so we get double the amount of traffic from that. It's just there's going to come a time they're going to have to do something about that. And, you know, everybody wants their beach permit. Listen, I get it. I understand it. But at the same time, you know, you'll see people to her point, Alabama, New York tags, and they've got their beach permit. And there's people that live here year round that can't get one.
Yeah.
So
are people grandfathered in?
some are. I've got a grandfather beach permit. I've had it for 25, 30 years, whatever it is. And then the rest are on a lottery. So you may, on the lottery, if someone owns, 6 condominiums here and lives out of state, they may get it, never set foot here and put it on a vehicle, and you may live here 20 years and not get on the, never get on the lottery. So yeah, it's a game of chance when it gets to lottery. And I'm not even sure how many they lottery out. I'm not sure what the
I'm
number
not
is.
sure either. I do know it has been a big discussion lately, just because you see a lot of people with the grandfather.
Yeah, people are mad. People are mad about the out-of-state tags, and we get that a lot. And I understand that, but there's nothing I can do about that.
Yeah. Sheila Strickland, I was told the hospital and clinic sold. Do you know who bought it and what will be put there?
I don't know anything about that.
Yeah. Teresa Willis says, you're the best sheriff we've ever had since I moved to Walton County in 1969.
Shazam. 1 year before I was born, so I like that a lot.
Michelle Porter.
Now, Andy Anderson was sheriff when she got here, and Sheriff Anderson was exceedingly popular at the time. Actually died in office, but I think he was elected 4 or 5 times before they.
You're coming close. You're coming in hot.
Time
Honest
to retire. That's what that is.
Michelle Porter. So even if the hospital can't come in just yet, how about an urgent care open on the weekend? They can do the small stuff.
Agreed. I think listen, you're not going to hear any argument from me.
Yeah.
I've called anybody. Me personally, I've spoken to multiple hospital administrators and hospital staff from different associations. And that's not my day job, right? I'm not good at it. I don't know what I'm talking about, but it's not going to be from lack of trying.
Yeah. Christina Blaisdell, what is being done about the loud mufflers and music all hours of the night in some neighborhoods?
So one of the things you have to remember is part of that call. We need calls. If you're consistently having a problem with that's what you pay your taxes for. Go ahead and call the sheriff's office and let us know if there's a particular problem. I mean, it irritates me too, right? But we have to be there to hear that for it to take any effect on it. So you have to call us. And I know it feels like annoying, but we also have to be there. Coming after the fact, we got to catch them in the act, for lack of a better way of putting it. Now, if you know who it is, we can certainly go out and talk to them and say, look, we need to cool this down.
Yeah. Martha Weaver, thank you so much. Keep up the great work.
Thank you.
Tracy Butcher says, proud of these men and women. Marilyn Wheelot, whatever happened to Villa Tasso? We have people speeding up and down our road. They've put up a sign, children playing, but I did ask for a 4-way stop at the corner of our property.
I don't know the answer. I'll have to ask. I know we've had more traffic enforcement out there for sure. Mm-hmm. For absolutely sure.
Yeah. Okay, and then sorry, I'm trying to go through to ask the questions.
I can always see the look on her face too. So I don't know what you're at. I say this all the time because invariably we get off there. Somebody goes, "Well, you dodged my question. You didn't want to answer the hard question." I don't see your question. Sorry, but Corey, I can tell when she doesn't like one because I can see the look on her face. So
no, it's not that I don't like them. I just don't know that they're asking a question. So I try to move on to people who are rather than making comments. Trey Oliver, are you enforcing car seats for infants when using golf carts on 30A? What about kids riding in the back of pickup trucks?
Yes,
Two very different questions. So the infants...
Just yes and yes.
On the golf carts on 30A. Yes, we've gotten a lot of not so nice emails from tourists who have gotten tickets.
Yeah, he missed that earlier because we were.
He was not happy with me.
And then we're funding your organization by doing this.
Oh yeah, okay. Like how dare we write a traffic citation for your 3-year-old not being in a car seat? on an open cart. Anyway,
and then the next email is you're not doing anything about email. But
it's absolutely
kind of funny.
insane.
But listen, you got to stay on top of that because it's children. At the end of the day, it's children's lives, and
sometimes I feel like I'm in the twilight zone.
Yeah.
You guys never pull people over for this. How dare you pull me over for this? Yeah. I feel bad for the deputies.
Yeah.
Marilyn is asking, what is going to happen with Highway 20 with lane changes on June 1st? I actually don't. Are they doing construction on?
So that's. I apologize. I don't know that either.
And just so people know, and I feel like I need to put this out on our Facebook page. District 3 FDOT has their own Facebook page. Yes. They put out all their projects. They put out like who's in charge of the projects, who the supervisor is, all of that, and they put out like road closures every week. FDOT District 3 on Facebook it's an excellent source of information for all the things you want to know going on in Walton County. Great. And then Ollie Walker said, FYI, South Walton Fire District has a website that addresses all sorts of things about fireworks. So, yeah. Pamela Thorstad, can you enforce lights on bikes after dark on 30A? 10, yeah. It's very dark. Headlights in our eyes when bikes cross. It's very scary to drive 30A.
Yeah. And again, I go back to the I hate to call it jaywalking, the old-fashioned term, but that's a real problem down there. We're continually having issues. I don't know if some of the folks who know, if we put more people on bike patrol, we're trying to do that more. We're trying to use them up in Defuniak and in Freeport where we can, and on 30A. There are certain areas of the county that allow for bike patrol. You know, Brian Kelly was nice enough to donate us a number of electric bikes a few years ago. We're starting to try and really emphasize that. And believe it or not, you have to have an instructor to allow these deputies to ride bikes. I know it sounds crazy, or you get sued. I know you find this hard to believe that somebody in the public would sue us for that. But yes, they will sue us for all kinds of things. But all joking aside, we've waited 2.5 years for instructors, because of COVID and other stuff. But we're trying to put more people on bike patrol. And trying to expand our community service officers as well too, which we think are doing a great job. We're hearing a lot from people about that. But so you'll start seeing, if you pay attention, you'll start seeing a few more deputies on bikes here and there, and we're trying to move that through areas of the county where it makes sense. It doesn't make sense in Red Bay to put somebody on a bicycle, right?
Yeah.
But it does make sense in Defuniak and in Freeport and in South Walton in certain areas. So a little bit of balance, but you're going to see those out a lot more, and hopefully that can help with the other bicycle infractions and the jaywalking and things like that.
Yeah. Marilyn says, thank you for taking care of the Freeport Middle School. I think she's talking about the kill list. We made an arrest on that.
Sad state of the world we're in. And I would just address that a little bit in general about shooting alleged or threats at schools, right? And or bomb threats or things. We just been inundated by bomb threats lately. And the catch-22 to this is you have to treat them a certain way. You just have to, because you can't be wrong. And people say, well, how often does that happen? I will tell you, we have walked a bomb into our office because somebody didn't know it was real before. It's been a number of years ago. We have to do it a certain way. The same thing when we have students that make threats of violence. And there is a school safety team that does a really good job. Mr. Hughes takes this very seriously. I know his staff, Charlie Morris, and there's folks over there. With our SRDs, everybody works together, and we evaluate these things. And we try to err on being reasonable, but we have to go on being cautious, right? So caution, the safety of the other students trumps what's going on with that student a lot of the time, right? But I do want people to understand, unfortunately, we deal with multiple of these a month. So while you hear about this particular list or this particular arrest, we probably have some version of these complaints probably 40 times a year. And that's a sad state of events, right? Not all of them are advertised. Not all of them. And what happens is kind of like the house party, right? By the time it grows, by the time everybody is added a new layer to it, it's something that it may or may not have been, right? But we still have to treat it seriously. We still have to go and do it. And we have to make sure, and we don't get to be wrong, which is a real problem. And you deal with some of these kids, and you go, we tracked a bomb threat down from the Pearl. We tracked it to a kid in Atlanta. And it's very frustrating. It takes a lot of time to deal with, but it has to be done a certain way. But I think I would be disingenuous if I didn't tell people that it happens a lot. we deal with a lot of. Some of them scare us. Quite frankly, we have some of them that scare us. That we go, hey, look, man, this is very. And we have some of them go, this kid's just a knucklehead, or this kid's got troubles, But there's some of them that do scare us. They really, really do. Corey and I had a kind of a discussion last week about somebody that we had to take some action against. We arrested the individual. His charge, not necessarily that serious. His potential risk to everybody, we think, is off the chart. The problem is I can't go advertising that to you because I'll get sued out of my mind because he technically has not done anything yet. Do I consider him a danger to this community? 100% I do. 100% I do. And we're going to try and treat him that way to the best of our ability. But there's that balance between what I know and what I can prove. And I have to, we're a country, we follow by the rules of law. We said that, talking about the rule of law, I'll touch off on this. We talked about the incident with Congressman Gates, the woman throwing the wine in his face. I really don't care how you feel about him. I don't care how you feel about Maxine Waters. I don't care how you feel about the president, Trump or Biden. I don't care. What I do care is that you conduct yourself appropriately. And we're not going to allow somebody to go out and harass an elected official because you don't like their policies. And for the people saying good for them, her, she ought to get an award. Well, you're about an idiot, quite frankly. That's what's wrong with this country, is that people don't know how to conduct themselves and have difference of opinion. But you can bet your sweet rear end, put your hands on somebody. I don't care if they're Democrat, Republican, Independent, Communist. I don't care. You go out there and do it in public, we're going to put you behind in jail. Do not pass go, because it's not acceptable. It is absolutely not acceptable. And I was ashamed. I'm ashamed of the people that say, well, I don't like him or I don't like her. I don't care. Is that really what we've come to, that this is okay? And maybe it is somewhere else, but we're not going to do that here.
Yeah.
No, I ain't going to say it because I'm going to cry. I'm fitting to crank myself.
I got to reel you back in.
Yeah. I got to reel it back in.
I'm trying to use the scissors cut. Marilyn, so thank you. Our school resource deputies were diligent and worked really hard on that. So we really appreciate you saying that.
And a really good work with the school district too. I thought they did a good job of us trying to work together on these.
Riley says, Sheriff, with the heavy deputy presence on 30A and sidewalks running the span of it, have you ever considered roller skates with flashing red and blue lights for some of the deputies?
If you knew how uncoordinated some of these people are.
Not to mention the fact that they would literally.
Know how many times people injure themselves falling out of chairs.
We would have mass separations. Everybody would be like, all right, I'm out.
Literally, we've had, I think this week, 2 separate people injure themselves badly walking out of the office. So no, we're not putting them on roller skates. There's a limit, man.
Good grief.
And I include myself in that too, by the way. So
I might be able to do roller blades, but skates, forget it.
Yeah, I broke my ankle walking out of a crack house one time, missing a step. I am not putting on roller skates. So. Just to be clear, I was in the crack house for work, not for recreation.
Oh gosh.
Right.
Chris Van Ecken, people that leave their shopping cart in parking spaces are the absolute worst.
They should go to jail. Dude, if I could put you in jail for that, I'd absolutely. I had the funniest interaction with a lady at the South Walton Publix on 98, and she said, she came up to me, she goes, you, sir, are a good person. I had no idea. I didn't know what it was about. She goes, I said, excuse me? She goes, I saw you push your shopping cart from a back across bar. That is what this country needs. Mm-hmm. And I started laughing because I was like, I think I agree with her. I think I agree with her.
Oh, man. Okay, no comment. I do return my shopping cart every time, though, so I will say that. Mark Holmes, only grandfathered permits don't have to be registered to vote. Lottery winners have to be registered voters. 150 lottery winners every year.
That's not right. That's not accurate. They have to be property owners.
Yeah.
Not voters.
Alan Schnitzer, do you know if there was a plan to put a homeless shelter in the Freeport area?
I have heard that. I have not seen it. I've heard, or I don't know if it's a homeless shelter. There is a shelter they were talking about trying to put in.
Oh.
But I don't know about a homeless shelter. I did hear something about a shelter the other day. And I apologize. It's fleeting my mind, but I think they've advertised it and talked about it for probably 6 months to a year.
Heard that. Okay.
Maybe in the, I don't want to say. I'll say it and I'll get people up in arms. But yeah, no, I think they were working on a shelter of some sort.
We'll double check that, Alan, and I'll get back to you. Cynthia Colson, thank you for everything. Why are they continuing to provide free parking at Grayton Beach State Park for tourists when it's reaching parking capacity at 8:30 a.m.?
No idea. I'm not sure. I don't know anything.
I believe that's a county county.
That park, or the park is a state park.
It's a state park, but the county provides.
Oh, you're talking about the county park across the street from where?
No. She's talking about the state park, but I believe the county provides like a trolley that goes in and out of Grayton now.
Yeah,
so there are places
park.
you can park. Correct. I think that people are parking at the state park, and then it's reaching capacity at 8:30 in the morning.
I did not realize that. Huh?
And she's saying it's free parking for tourists. Are they, Cynthia? If you could just, are they accessing the state park, or are they trying to access Grayton by parking there? Jimmy Foreman said he likes that your shirt is gator orange.
Slow down, Mr. Foreman. This is sun orange, not.
Yeah.
We call it gator orange.
Sorry, I'm a Knowles fan.
I need to check the number of permits. I don't think the number of permits that gentleman said was correct either, by the way.
150?
Yeah, I don't think that's accurate either. I think it's actually quite a bit more. I may be wrong about that.
We will have to research
I'm wrong pretty regularly, so maybe wrong about that.
Michelle Porter, the hit and run in Freeport, the victim was killed, and the man that did it is still living his life. Why is there not any justice for his life? I'm not sure which hit and run they're talking about.
But I will tell you, if it was a hit and run case, it was handled by the Florida Highway Patrol.
Yeah.
And so I don't know anything about the specifics of the case past that. If you want to email us, we can certainly get with the Highway Patrol and ask them. But any case like that, would they actually work?
Sure. Elizabeth Parker, if people crossing 30A would press the button for flashers, it would be a huge improvement.
Yeah, I agree with you, but believe it or not, they don't have to under Florida law, which does not make sense to me. I think the law is, it's kind of, we get a lot of complaints about bicyclists on 30A, and people call and they're really upset with us because they say, well, why don't they use the bike path? And I have to explain, we have to explain to them that we can't control that. That is controlled by, Florida state statute. We can't make them use the bike path. Likewise, they don't have to have flashers. They don't have to have some of these things that you would think make common sense.
But they do have to obey the rules of the road.
They do have to obey the rules of the road.
Stop signs,
yeah,
stop
absolutely,
lights,
absolutely.
all of that. Okay, Tom has a great question.
Come on, Tom.
I own an LSV. I drive it for a half or 3/4 of a mile wearing a seatbelt, but experience road rage from cars that want to drive 40 and a 25. Please let folks know LSVs have a right to drive to the beach. I'm feeling a need to conceal carry.
So there's like multiple layers there. Let's go back to the basic for just a sec when you're talking about your low speed vehicle. And this is, he actually touches on the real heart of the issue with the low speed vehicle. A lot of what their people are seeing low speed vehicle actually is not illegal. People don't like them on the road, and that's a totally separate, because we hear that a lot. Well, there are a lot of underage people driving. A lot of it, they're 16 years old and they look like they're 12, right? But a vast number comes down to it. It's a lot of it may be blocking traffic, in your opinion, right? And people don't like it, so they're very angry. To his point, they're very angry about these low speed vehicles. But that's not something. Listen, it's the law. Whether I like it or not, whether you like it or not, is not relevant. The only thing that can change that is changing the speed limit of the road, right? The county can't ban low-speed vehicles, just say we don't want low-speed vehicles. No, they have to say what the speed parameters are, all right? And to his point, we get a lot of people, what they're really angry about is they cannot go as fast as they want to go. Because maybe there's 2, 3, 4 low-speed vehicles or one low-speed vehicle. And the county passed the thing to give a place for someone to pull out of the way. But here's the truth. They don't actually have to pull out of the way, which is really going to infuriate people. I'm going to go back to the second part, this road rage incidences. We have had just an absolute epidemic of road rage. I think we've had 6 of them involving firearms. And I will tell you, just about every one of them that pulled the firearm said they were justified in doing it, and they all went to jail because they misunderstand what is self-defense, right? I don't care if it's stand your ground or if it's castle doctrine or any of these things. They really wildly misunderstand. They're so caught up in the moment, they go to that gun. And I don't know what to do about that because we've probably had at least 6 that I can think of in the last year and a half. It's maddening. It's maddening that these people are doing that. And we have an idiot that'll get out and run up in the middle of traffic with a phone and stick his phone in the window. I'm videoing you and I'm going to make you famous. Well, then somebody else pulls a gun. Well, I felt threatened. Well, no, that doesn't work. Now, I agree. The first guy is a jackwagon for going up there. And you just have people not acting like adults or decent citizens and then trying to justify their behavior, which has become the newest thing to victim mentality for everything, or this right to call people out. The bottom line is what the gentleman said is actually correct. There's perfectly legal to be on the roadway. It doesn't matter whether I like it, you like it, or anybody else likes it. That's the law. And so I would say let's try and use a little grace and a little common sense. But I'm about to give up on that part. And if that doesn't work, you'll go to jail for tailgating one of these low-speed vehicles, or ramming one of these low-speed vehicles, or forcing them off the road. But it's incredibly dangerous. It worries me as a father. It worries me as a sheriff, because we deal with this all the time. And reasonable people, they just want to scream and yell at these people to get out of the roadway. And maybe what they're doing is perfectly legal. And again, it doesn't matter whether I like it or you like it. That's the facts. So.
And he did say he was wearing a seatbelt, so bravo to you, Tom.
Yeah, good for you. Yeah.
Laura Lee Sparks says free parking through the TDC at all state parks in South Walton during season. Mm-hmm. I think that's what the woman was referencing before when she said they're at capacity at 8:30.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
maybe in the state park. Yeah.
Yeah. Patrick Hancock, what she's talking about is the TDC is paying for anyone that wants to park in Grayton Beach State Park and Topsail.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. Deborah McCormick. Hi, Deb. She said, go Knowles. Go
Amen.
Knowles. Tim White, the night shift deputies, more specifically Sergeant Bennett and his deputies, are the absolute best. Always willing to lend a hand or advice. Kudos to them. Tim, retweet.
Yeah,
I agree.
Flash is a good sergeant. He does a good job for us out there.
Yeah. Robin Harris. Yep. They're talking about, in Grayton Beach State Park, they allow paying campers. In essence, many cars can be campers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for all you do. We have the best in the business protecting us. Thank you, Nathan Hobbs. Pamela says, is there something you can do about the pedestrians walking across the crosswalk at the light in Rosemary when I have a green light? Sometimes they walk in front of my car.
Yeah, so unfortunately, they sometimes they have the right-of-way in the absence of a signal, which is maddening. And Rosemary is actually one of the few places that
has a signal.
That has signals. Yeah, they're one of a handful of places on 30A. We try very diligently to work on that. I know it's frustrating. It frustrates me every time I drive down there. I've had to get out a couple of times and explain this to people. And you know how that is. Sometimes people check their common sense when they come on vacation, right? And it is a problem. We're hopeful that more foot and bike patrols. We saw it pay really good dividends over spring break. We're in the process of trying to get a lot more deputies out on the street, and these community service officers helping as well too. So we see that as kind of a two-pronged approach for the summer. Because I agree with her. I mean, whether it's Rosemary or Seaside, it's dangerous. At least Rosemary has those control places, which I think is good. It's good.
Trey Ross, last year there were 1,200 entries for 150 beach permits.
Was it 150? Okay, so it was 150. I knew there was 1,000 plus.
500 applicants were rejected because vehicles were not four-wheel drive.
Yeah, we see that a lot.
All-wheel drive.
Apparently that doesn't stop people from trying to drive on the beach, though. We've had a number of people literally trying to drive their cars on the beach. You can't make that up.
No.
You know?
No, I see it all the time.
Yeah.
We're caught up on questions. A lot of people just saying thank you. And
we can double check me on the property, but I'm like 99.99% sure that I'm right about that. You have to own property. It's not registered.
It's not based on whether you're a registered voter. Yeah.
Catherine, I think it should be again, but.
Catherine Bacon Schaefer says, I love being in a local and nothing like being safe here with Walton County Sheriff's Office. We appreciate you.
Yeah, awesome.
Should probably throw in a little caveat that we're hiring.
We're definitely hiring. We're hiring in multiple modalities. Mm-hmm. We are hiring at fire rescue. We are hiring at the field operations, deputy sheriff. We're hiring at the jail. We're hiring at dispatch. We're hiring at animal control. Mm-hmm. Quite frankly, we're just hiring.
Yeah.
And so, but the one thing I would say to our citizens about that too, and I think this is important, is we're not going to lower our standards. We let 3 people go this week. We need deputies. That's a real hurt for us now. But we let 3 go. And the reality of it is that's the business I'm in, and my responsibility here is to make sure to set a standard and hold it. We don't let, just because somebody called, if we got rid of everybody that called and complained on a deputy, there'd be nobody working here. I wouldn't be here, right? People don't like me either. So, and that's okay. right? But we do have a standard for our, whether it's our fire rescue or it's our detention staff or our animal control or any of those folks, we have a standard we expect you to meet. And we will work short before we hire the wrong people, before we retain the wrong people. And I don't make any apologize for it. And if people don't like that, and they really need another sheriff, quite frankly, because I'm just not going to do it. We're going to get the best we can. We don't expect perfection. What I try and say is we hire character and we teach skills, and not going to apologize for it, so. But we definitely, if you think you've got the right character, we can teach you to be a fireman. We can teach you to be an EMT, a medic, a deputy sheriff, a detention deputy, a dispatcher, animal control, wherever it is. We can teach you the skills as long as you come with us to the right attitude. Yeah. And so we've had people come here from other agencies, other police departments, sheriff's offices from across the country that want to be there, and they don't fit the mold of what we're about. And part of that here, and you'll see this in our Sheriff Live and other things, is I kind of feel like my job is to take the arrows when somebody's mad. Well, you didn't do something about the house party because secretly there were LEO kids there, whatever, my kids there, whatever story you want to make up. The truth is, it's my job to stand out here and take the arrows and the spears, right? That's what I do, and then to make sure that the men and women that actually deserve credit for doing the work, the deputies, the firefighters, the dispatchers, the staff, that they get the credit and the equipment they need to have, and that's what we're going to do. But part of that, for me sitting here taking these spears, is also for me to say we have a standard, and this is the standard we're going to accept, and we won't accept lower than that. So I think that's what makes Walton County special. I think the same thing that made a good public safety person in 1970. The lady said about 1969, 1970. I think the skills may have changed, right? I mean, you may be tactically better, you may drive better, and we may know more medical skills. But what it takes to be a good deputy sheriff, a good firefighter, a good EMT, a good medic, has not changed, and it's not going to change. And anybody that changes it, their organization will go down the tubes, and we're not going to do that here. So
and I think people would be really surprised what other positions are available. Like, we have nurses in the jail.
Oh yeah,
and people, that doesn't even register to people. Which, by the way, we are hiring LPNs and RNs.
We've had an opening for over a year and a half.
Yeah,
that's how hard it is to hire folks, because it's a tough environment to work. But but here's what's interesting: we've had an opening for years, but the staff we've had for years.
Yeah.
Which says a lot
they're
of their
good
dedication.
People. Yeah, they're good.
Listen, we got a food service manager out there that if you were running 80% of all restaurants fail inside of the first 5 years. True story. And our food costs, Mr. Lyons has reduced the food costs while meeting standards for the last 5 years, significantly driving the cost down. We got a commercial driving instructor school. We got Mr. Simmons, we got folks up there that are trying. We have a farmer on staff. Mr. Bird, Ike Bird out there, and the guys at work at 5 o'clock in the morning. There's no sunlight on the tractor, and driving costs down. So you can't beat finding people like that. They're what make this Walton County a special place. And so my job is to kind of hold the line on it. My job is to hold the line.
Yeah. Jesse Anderson is asking if there's updates on the shooting in Defuniak last week. We made
one arrest. We made an arrest in the Marshals Task Force with the Sheriff's Office deputies. Arrested it was a Defuniak Springs case.
Campbell is his name.
Campbell was picked up in South Walton by Marshals Task Force and some of our deputies. So there was an arrest made there. We actually made a couple of. I think our Marshals Task Force deputies and those folks, I think they've arrested 4 or 5 attempted murder suspect out of Tennessee, eluding lascivious. This guy's hiding in the ground under their trailer. They've made 4 or 5 big arrests. Eric Walton and those guys with the Marshals Task Force just been really getting after it.
And a lot of times that stuff, they're doing that stuff every day, every week, and
we don't post all. So a lot of people, I think that's one thing that people don't understand is we don't post. We don't post everything, believe it or not. And so a lot of cases, Corey will mention, we just things that we think maybe are important. We sometimes don't even. We just have to balance it because we don't every day to be. We've had to tackle somebody and arrest them or X, Y, or Z. And so we want to keep you informed, but we have to find some balance. There's only so many days a week. Here's something we always say too, and we see this a lot with the county, and I say this, not really tongue in cheek. I say it and I mean it, which is remember, just because you don't know something doesn't mean it was emergency. I mean, it was a secret, that we're trying to hide it from you. It just means there's a lot going on. We get that a lot. Well, you didn't tell us this. Well, I didn't tell you about 25 other things too, by the way. Because there's only so many hours in a day, and we have to find some balance to this.
Yeah, and I think people don't realize how much deputies do that are outside of just arresting people. Sure. And while that is important, and what the U.S. Marshals Task Force does is important, there's so many other things happening.
Sure. We're talking about back to school. We'll be back. We're at school's just out. We did graduation this last week in Walton County schools, and all across the county. SRDs and school staff, and they're getting after making sure these kids safe, and we had a safe graduation, which is important. Here's the thing: a lot of people just assume that happens. What they don't see is all the deputies that get the people out of there, the people in the traffic. So all this stuff matters. It's the stuff we do that maybe you don't always see. It's the same way with our fire rescue staff. It's the same person's house that they go to 5 times, and maybe they're just putting them back in bed. Mm-hmm. How many times they have to go and put somebody back in bed that can't get in their own bed.
Yeah.
We don't always tell you that, but we get out there and we get after it and we do it.
Yeah. Leanne Mack says, thanks for your help. Scott Mislon sends, hey, Scott.
Hey, Scott. Long time
no see.
Yeah.
And a lot of people just saying thank you. Talk a little bit about, because it's still affecting people in the north end of the county right now. I-10 is, we had a pretty bad crash on I-10 today, and that might be affecting congestion on 90, 81, 20.
It's affecting everything. So that is a traffic homicide investigation at this point. Mm-hmm. Again, the Highway Patrol is managing that. We're assisting, but there was a fatality of I don't want to release the information on it because it's FHP's case, but just to say this, it was a result of a pursuit, and it's a very bad situation.
Yeah. Very
tough on our staff, very tough on Highway Patrol staff. It was nothing good happened today there.
Yeah. So. Mr. Rojas wants to know, I have a question.
Okay.
What will happen to Hispanics in this county now that the governor's law comes into effect?
So and it's so interesting, Mr. Rojas, because we actually have a podcast. We're fixing to roll out with a podcast in the next week, trying to explain to citizens what local law enforcement, what local policing and sheriff's role is in immigration, right? So I'm sure he's probably discussing E-Verify and those types of things. You have to understand that a lot of these are actually federal laws, and the enforceability is only by federal agents from that standpoint. So, and one of the things that happened probably 2 weeks ago, we were talking about this, is ICE was doing an operation, and it coincided with the governor signing that new law, but they actually weren't related. The operation was for people that had deportation orders, multiple deportation orders, and they had announced it months in advance they were going to do it. So it was not related to the governor's new sign, E-Verify and those things. So from that standpoint, that's really not a local law enforcement issue. It's a federal law enforcement issue. And, as far as, the challenges to employers, I'm not super familiar with that. I don't know what their fines or penalties. But from our standpoint, the sheriff's office is not going to be raiding job sites or things of that nature. We don't do that. We don't target people based on their race, ethnicity, or gender. You can't lawfully do that. We have no authority to do that, and you can't target specifically that way, right? Now, if they send us a warrant tomorrow and they said Corey DeBritnia is here illegally from Russia, then and we have a warrant for arrest, that's different. Mm-hmm. But I will tell you, just because I've said this before, and we'll say this in a podcast. Of the people that are here illegally that we arrest, so these are people we arrest at the sheriff's office for crimes other than being here illegally. Not for that. They're being arrested for another crime. DUI, burglary, traffic, whatever it is. We tell ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, they come get maybe they come get, out of 100, maybe they come get 7. Mm-hmm. So they're not being picked up like that. And so I think everybody is on this misunderstanding about what is actually happening. And a lot of people are saber rattling both. And again, I don't care if you want the border closed down. I don't care if you want the border open. That's not relevant from this discussion. The discussion of what they're actually doing, because there's a huge difference between what they're saying they're doing and what they're actually doing at the federal government level and at the local level, quite frankly. Mm-hmm. So if anybody is telling you at the local level they are out enforcing this, they're not being truthful. They're just not, because they don't have the authority to do it.
Yeah. Laura Lee Sparks is saying it's a new Florida law DeSantis signed, so wouldn't that fall on local law enforcement?
Yeah, no, you only have certain things that you can enforce, right? But a lot of it has to do with the ability to who employers are and how that's investigated. But mostly it's not going to fall on locals. It's actually not. And so, we're waiting to see what the shakeout of E-Verify and some of those things are. But a lot of it's coming back to employers, right? Not necessarily the employee themselves or somebody here illegally. But I know that we get that a lot. People say, well, why did you release somebody here because they're here illegally and they committed a crime? But I can be sued. So the law I can be sued for holding somebody that does not have a warrant if they're in the country illegally. It's bottom line. And in fact, I can tell you 2 sheriff's offices in Florida that have significant lawsuits from trying to hold somebody because they thought ICE wanted them held. So it's not really what people think. It's a little bit more complicated. Not a little bit. It's a lot more complicated than that. And it doesn't matter what I want or don't want. I mean, I'll just be very blunt and tell you the border should be secured. Period. Keep in mind, you have 13 million people in this country illegally, undocumented, whatever term you wanted to use. 13 million people. If tomorrow magically the federal government said we're going to deport 13 million people, there are only about 8,000 ICE agents in the entire country. Every one of those 13 million people are entitled to a court hearing. Do the math on that. It's not going to work. So when people tell you they're going to do some of this stuff, they're not actually. They're just talking. They're just talking. Now, there are things that can be done that make a lot of sense and that they should be doing. But I don't.
We're going to talk about that in the podcast.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in the podcast. But a lot of it is just so much lip service. It's so frustrating, and it frustrates me to have to release somebody that's committed a crime. So if Corey again has committed a burglary and she's here from whatever, Sweden, Mexico, wherever, it doesn't matter to me. Yeah, I think if you're committed to a felony, you should be sent back from that, right? But that's not what's happening. So yeah, it's just that's the state of events.
Yeah. So. Now that you've sold the podcast.
Yeah, I don't know if I sold it. Somebody's mad because they don't like the immigration policy.
Elizabeth wants to know what the name of the podcast is, and actually,
we just decided that today.
We decided that today. So do you want to tell people?
Yeah, it's called The Art of Policing, and what we're trying to do is just give you both sides of an issue, and immigration is the first one. Again, we don't proffer the way you necessarily should do it. We're just trying to tell you the truth because I get so frustrated. So somebody will say, well, why didn't this happen? And in this other case, this happened. We say, well, you change one fact, and sometimes you change the whole outcome. And and context matters. The rest of Paul Harvey, and I told Corey about Paul Harvey today. She know who that is. But Paul Harvey used to say the rest of the story. And maybe that's what a new generation's hear is the rest of the story. And don't confuse with this podcast. Don't confuse what we're telling you we like. We're just telling you what the facts are.
Yeah, because we get a lot of questions from residents who, and the podcasts are going to cover a whole slew of topics. It's going to be immigration and this new law about permitless carry.
We'll
and we're going to talk about.
We'll talk about needle exchanges, drug overdose, inmate training. We're going to talk about no more concealed weapon. What's the difference between concealed weapon, constitutional carry, and open carry? People use those terms interchangeably. They're not.
Yeah.
New law.
What's the difference between a burglary and a robbery?
Yeah,
like some of the things that people don't know.
I had a burglary. I got robbed. So yeah, that's a great example. Yeah. Those types of thing. Go back to house party. People hear of a burglary. It was actually trespassing, right? Mm-hmm. So all these things are different based on certain facts. Mm-hmm. And for us, we just want to try and give you the facts, and then you can decide, and maybe you should call your elected official and say, hey, this is what I want changed, or this is not. The difference between a trespass warning and a restraining order, huge difference, right? Yeah. But people, they have good questions about it. And so we just thought immigration was a great place to start. And then the next place will be immigration as it affects to local law enforcement. We were lucky enough to reach out to an official at ICE and let them hear it, working with some folks at the Department of Law Enforcement, let them hear our podcast first and say, look, did we say something crazy? But invariably, Corey and I talk about, there are people that hear the immigration go, I don't like him because he said that, and I know that we should be doing this. Well, I'm not the one that does that. I feel very strongly that the sheriff's obligation is to follow the rule of law, follow the rule of law. Not what I want the law to be, but rather what it is. We're going to do a podcast on customary use and where that's at with a potential settlement floating around out there. So there's a lot of stuff going on. We're going to try and get it out there, and hopefully it's a value add for you.
Yeah, and just to sort of answer some of the questions that were commonly asked, and we want to delve into on a deeper level.
That we can give you the whole story, because again, part of the story gets people in trouble. Part of the story gets people in trouble. Always. It gets me in trouble, quite frankly. So.
You may be in trouble for this one.
I could be in trouble for that. Yes, quite possibly.
A couple other questions. We've been on air about an hour, a little over an hour. Jenny Richardson, can you please do something about the illegal parking along Scenic Old 98, especially near Whalestail? I know that our posse and our CSOs and code enforcement
has been down there. Yeah,
they've all been really pushing out some parking tickets, and they're all well versed on it. We'll pass that along to them.
We'll see about getting those folks down there.
And then Becky Hours, what are the laws regarding a hit and run when the person does not stop to assist?
So it's like multiple parts to that. And the short answer is it's a crime. To hit and run is a crime, right? And how big of a crime it is, felony or misdemeanor, depends on the amount of damage done and whether or not there's injury, right? All those things happen. One of the other things, and somebody mentioned this, that may or may not be relevant, but a lot of times FHP, for instance, will not make an arrest that night. A lot of times we won't make an arrest that night, even if we know who it is, because a lot of times we're waiting on blood tests. Sometimes we'll do a blood test, or we'll do some follow-up testing as well. So it's
or there has to be a search warrant for the vehicle.
Or there's a search warrant for the vehicle. And we'll get that. People go, why haven't you arrested them? Why do they get to go home that night? But a lot of times it's waiting on blood to come back or subpoenas for these kind of things. There's a big difference between what I can do and what I want to do, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of times we'd love to go snatch some people up and deal with it, but we have to kind of follow certain rules.
Yeah.
So, but a short answer to her question, yes, it's a crime. Yes, it's a crime.
Yeah. Rich Foster, Sheriff, would you consider becoming Governor Ron DeSantis' vice president running mate?
He'd fire me. Like PDQ quick, right? Because of this right here. You know? He's like,
man.
He's like, you're done. You're done, Sheriff. You need to go back. So.
Chris Van Ecken, with the new gun law coming into play on July 1st, what exactly are the limitations?
Yeah, we probably going to need to do that in a little short informational podcast. We're going to try and get that out.
There's so much to it.
There's about 3 or 4 different issues. The short version is being able to carry without a permit that's the short, easy version. If somebody's going to mishear that.
But that's not the same as open carry.
It is fundamentally not the same thing. And again, we're using about 3 different terms: open carry, constitutional carry, permitless carry. The law is for permitless carry. They're calling it constitutional carry, which means different things to different people. The short version is it will no longer require you to have a concealed weapons permit. But understand, there are still places you can't go with that firearm. You know, and so we're going to try and put some information out. Hopefully, Corey and I were talking about doing something in the next week or so. Mm-hmm. We've got to make sure our deputies are trained on it. I mean, this is these are things that are important. So we're going to get you some information out in the next week or so. That's the short version of it.
Great. Deanna Smith, just a curiosity, if you have anything set up for someone who may need help psychologically. People who have mental issues are usually let go and released. However, these people are not given or have the needs necessary for mental health treatment.
Sure, we're actually trying something new. We're working on piloting a project where we take essentially a social worker to help follow back up. We'll call it something else, but that would be the layman's term version of it. So if we have somebody, for instance, we Baker Act sometimes people dozens and dozens of time a year. And the families get so mad at us, the public gets so mad, why aren't you doing something? You know, and so, I mean, I understand their frustration, but it's frustration to us. So the way that works is we could Baker Act someone, which is taking them in for an involuntary commitment. It's called a BA-52, I think is the form. That's how many times we've done it. That is the form, isn't it? BA-52. Yeah, thank you. And that will drive somebody to Fort Walton Beach Medical Center, the psychiatric evaluation. So that's, call it an hour drive to Fort Walton, hour to get the paperwork, an hour back, and they'll beat us out of there. Right, the doctors or staff there will let them go, and these are people that have some pretty significant needs, and we do that multiple times a year with the same people. So yeah, we want to see more services. I mean, we think it's important. We don't hold people under those kind of commitments at the county jail, just like we don't hold intoxicated. We get that a lot. Well, this person's intoxicated, you hold them. The liability involved in that for us as a county jail. It's not like Andy Griffith anymore, where you go put them in the old drunk cell and they sit there. I mean, both of those things are the law has changed and evolved. We have to take them to certain places, but we have so limited services in Walton County that it's a struggle. So yes, the short version of that is that we're trying some new pilot programs.
Yeah. Steve Sunday, your cold case investigator, says you better not let his wife see you wearing that orange color.
Yeah, I know, right? I'm gonna
And Chris is asking, I didn't quite catch it, but where can I listen to the podcast? Long story short, it's coming, but we have not made it public yet. Yeah. Trying to like cross my T's, dot my I's, and make sure we've got a name and all the artwork done. And we want to get some in the queue too before we go out.
We were talking about you finished editing. We finished editing the immigration, which is very timely. Mm-hmm. We're going to jump on the concealed carry, permitless carry, and constitutional carry, all that stuff. We're going to try and do that maybe the next week or so, that we can go out with 2 of them, maybe right out of the can.
Yeah, but I'm thinking Apple and Spotify and maybe a couple of other places where you can find it. So once we do publish, everybody will know. Yeah. It'll be out there on our social media, and you'll be able to get to it quick.
Yeah, and again, this is for it to be a value add. We're not joking. I'm not here trying to be Joe Rogan. I'm not trying to get $100 million deal. We're just trying to give you something that's a value add. And so,
although I did say that to you today. Well, Joe Rogan does it this way.
Well, we don't need a 3-hour podcast, right? We need to give you some information, something that's valuable to you, and then we'll take suggestions in the future of stuff that you think. We'll do how not to make people happy with a house party.
Yeah,
we'll do that one. How about that?
Yikes.
Yeah. Or how not to do something, So again, it's some of these things. Really, that's not a bad one to do. You can talk about what the actual restraints of the law are, because I think people, people just have it in their mind that you can do certain things that we simply can't do. And that's one of the things you have to remember, that these laws are there to protect you from me. All these laws are to protect that. The same things that frustrate you about making an arrest are to protect the citizen from the sheriff, and that is the way it should be.
Yeah,
that's the way it should be. I have certain restrictions that I just don't get to do, and so I think that's important in a free society. You should always have a healthy. Americans have a healthy distrust of authority, and I'm okay with that. That's part of it. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's about 6:45, and I know.
Do we leave any questions unanswered that we say we'll be dodging later?
Oh, I don't think so, unless my eyes are just blurred. We've talked about immigration. We've talked about all the things that we wanted to talk about. And we've talked about the fact that we're hiring people. So come on, let's go
School's out,
with it.
kids safe, they're going out. That's what we're trying to. We're super happy about that, and
we'll be back in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, we'll be back in. Josh probably early June, and we're in full swing right now. So good stuff there, and hopefully we'll just have some more good stuff and answer questions. And I think for sure podcast will be released before then. And get your questions together. We'll be glad to try and handle them. Great. So thank you for your time. We appreciate working with you, or for you in this case.